everyone. It is Monday, a beautiful October day in central Indiana. I hope it's beautiful wherever you are. We are here on another edition of Mental Health Monday for Monday, October 23rd. And boy, I am excited this morning. We are going to talk to someone I know very, very well and who knows me very, very well and knows my life and the entire city of Noblesville very, very well. Sarah Reed, Noblesville's Community Development Director. Sarah, how are you this morning?
I'm great this morning. Thank you, Mayor
Good,
Jensen.
good. I'm joined as well by my good friend Kristen Boyce, the owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen and Sarah. We're so excited you're joining us today.
Thank
We
you.
are
I signed up for this and I'm not sure I'm ready, but we're going to
Well,
do it.
it's happening. It's happening right now. We all are dressed in a similar theme here. We all have pink on because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Sarah is a survivor and a thriver of breast cancer and has raised her hand and offered to come on today and talk a little bit about that, about healing, and about all the things that go around this. Now, I told Sarah she did a podcast on this. So she's most nervous, Kristen, about being seen while talking. So she's got the talking part down. She's more concerned about being seen while talking. So just full disclosure, Sarah, you look great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry to out you there, but
I'm an open book. It's okay.
You know me pretty well. I overshare, and so there you go. So we're going to have a great conversation. We have people tuning in from all over the world today, Sarah, just to put more pressure on you, who are excited to hear your story and hear your journey. And Kristen's going to help talk a little bit about the healing process through that and what that looks like. And whether it be if you're watching today and you are a breast cancer survivor or you are any other type of cancer survivor or any type of survivor and thriver on anything, you'll be able to pull from this conversation today. I am 100% confident in that. So, Sarah, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for owning up to this today. And I promise you it's going to go so fast and going to be so fun, and you're going to be glad you did it. So thank you. But before we get started, we always start with some square breathing as a way to relax ourselves and set our mind right. Sarah said she is definitely in need of this morning. So perfect. So I'm going to let Kristen lead some square breathing exercises.
So the first thing we want to do is kind of settle into either if you're standing, settle into your feet, or settle into your chair so we can come back to this present moment. We're not in the future. We're not in the past. We're right here together, and you stay open and mindful to whatever comes through. So we're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4, and we're going to slowly exhale out our mouth for 8, like you're cooling a cookie or cooling soup. This allows your nervous system to reset, to get out of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that people-pleasing phase that we can do sometimes, to come back into the present moment. So let's do 2 breaths together. So we're going to take a big, deep inhale through your nose. Hold and release. As you can see, we're slowing things down because we're usually in a rat race. We're going from one thing to the next, or we're just not mindful in the moment. So this helps us slow down. So let's take one more deep breath through our nose and exhale out your mouth. Just kind of check in, noticing the difference. And if you need to continue, I invite you to continue taking these deep breaths throughout the day. I recommend every hour, 5 to 6 breaths to really get the full benefit try it for a week and let me know how it goes.
Awesome. We do a lot of square breathing. Sarah can tell you around our office. Brad, we're going to talk about that affordable housing some other time. Reach out to me and we'll look forward to chatting about that. But speaking of that, if you have any questions throughout today for Sarah or just want to root her on, feel free to type a quick note there in the chat. We'd love to respond and get back to you and be able to maybe answer live. If not, we'll get some information for you later and get it over to you. So we're excited for this conversation. I'll ask the first question, then Chris, I'm going to kind of let you kind of guide this conversation. I got to sit back and kind of watch it happen. Which is exciting. But Sarah, will you want to spend just a minute or two telling us kind of your story, kind of get a little history on your diagnosis, kind of what you've been up to since and where you are maybe in the healing process?
Sure. So I'll try to do my best to make it as quick as possible. But when you turn 40, you get your first mammogram. Hopefully you get your first mammogram. And I got mine and realized I had dense breast tissue. And so the technician asked me if I had a family history of breast cancer and if I had done any genetic testing after that. And I did have family history of breast cancer, and I did the genetic testing as well. And I have a mutated gene called CHEK2. And so from there, we did some early additional screening. So I would get a mammogram and an MRI every 6 months apart. And the first MRI was clear. The second one found, second year, I guess, found a very small 3 millimeter mass. Did a biopsy, and it was positive for invasive ductal carcinoma. And so the quick get me to where we are here today. I did a double mastectomy in March. I did reconstruction in June, and now I have my 3-month second post-op in November on the 4th. So I am officially in remission. I might have officially been in remission after the biopsy, which is great. Cancer had not spread to my lymph nodes, so no chemo, no radiation. I like to say I got the best case of the worst case scenario. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And again, as somebody who's got to sit front row seat to your journey, it's been awesome to see Sarah become not just a survivor, but an advocate, and does a lot around this topic, which is awesome, and a great way that she has found healing through that. So, Kristen, do you want to take it from there and talk a little bit about kind of that process? I'm sure you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of folks who have gone through similar situations. Can you talk a little bit about the mental health components around this, and maybe the trauma that starts out with that first diagnosis?
Yeah. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. I think the more we can tell our story, the more we can build that support. That is so important in anyone's healing journey. So thank you for being on here today. I think the first thing that I want to say is emotionally, it can feel like a roller coaster for many people. You kind of go through the stages of grief that are not linear. That's the misnomer about stages of grief, that shock, kind of disbelief, and then the bargaining, maybe some anger, some sadness, some depression. And then we kind of come to the acceptance phase. And that can kind of come in and out. We can go through those depending on, if you're telling, like, for example, you've had to tell your son about your diagnosis, and your husband and your family and your loved ones, and that brings up so many emotions. So how did you deal with that first the news of getting that information that you did have breast cancer? And then tell us about emotionally how you dealt with that with your family.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, I got my diagnosis a couple days after Christmas, so December 27th. And it comes through. Sometimes you get these MyChart notifications. And so I, was, completely dismissive that I even had breast cancer when I had a biopsy. I'm like, it's so small, no big deal. It's not going to be a big thing. Didn't think twice of it. And then I got the notification come through from MyChart. My husband, he's going to kill me for saying this out loud on video, but he is a nurse. And so I'm like, hey, can you read this? And what does this mean? And he's like, well, do you see the word carcinoma? And I'm like, yeah. And then 5 seconds later, they called me to tell me, and he was right there with me when that happened. So he was able to be there with me. And then, we kind of cried and regrouped here for a second, and then went in, and my parents were visiting for Christmas, and my son was in there too. And so I said, I just got the call. I have breast cancer. And we did this family hug. Everybody just like stood up immediately and started hugging me. We had a hug circle, and we all cried. And my son, I think he was crying more because we were crying, not because he knew what that meant. But we have a very close community, and another friend of mine in the Hamilton Heights community is going through cancer, and her son and my son are in the same grade. And so she had gotten her news in October, and mine was in December. So very close timing there. In fact, she has the same type of breast cancer as me.
Oh, that's so hard. And you bond. There is a bonding that happens with anyone on the journey.
Yeah, we call it a sisterhood. Yeah. There might be some sisters listening actually right now.
Yes, please comment in the chat if you are. I think that is an important bond and shared experience to have. I think one of the things is fear of death, fear of how the impact will have on the family system. I work a lot with clients on fear. Tell us how you faced the fear and worked through it and continue to face it.
Sure. I'll list kind of two things. The first one is faith, and I had always believed in God, prayed, went to church on Easter and Christmas. We had started to try to find a church home before this had happened, mostly because my son asked us to go, so he kind of initiated it. But we have found a very good community in the White River North Remnant campus. And so as soon as I got my diagnosis, I felt this very big calling to get baptized. And so actually Chris was there when Gunnar and I were baptized. So my son and I got baptized together. My husband had already been. And so, that was a really big step for me. And so I almost feel as though the fear is gone, and I have a very peaceful approach to that because it's out of my hands. It's for a bigger purpose. And then also, I still think there's lots of other things to be fearful of instead of death. Like losing my hair was a very scary thought process that I went through, and really the impact to my family. How will they get around without me if I'm not able to do things after my surgery, those kinds of things. But my husband and I, it was his idea to start a podcast to sort of document this journey and to tell our story. And I was very fearful of that. But it has been really therapeutic, and I think great for both of us. And we documented most of the processes of the surgeries, and we're not doing as great as we should on keeping up with progress here, but hopefully we can keep going with a podcast together and kind of sharing all perspectives from his perspective too. I think it's helpful for husbands. They don't necessarily know what to do or say, or friends who want to help somehow but don't know how.
Yeah. So what's the name of the podcast for those that might be interested?
It's called The Triage Desk, and I promise that I will post a link in the chat after we were done in case anybody wants to listen to it.
Fantastic.
But you're going to definitely hear laughing and crying and get to know the two of us together a little bit better. So,
and I see that Megan Ott Foundation is commenting, and that they have made such an impact in the community. And without them, I mean, there's just a ripple effect that they've had. So thank you so much for being here and your impact that you've had on this community. And I highly recommend clients utilize Megan Ott Foundation. Yeah. Because the depth of support is just impactful and meaningful to the whole family, not only the person going through the cancer, but also the family.
Yes.
So listen to your podcast resources, reach out and ask for help. This is tell people how that was for you to share this with other people, because it's vulnerable. And we don't want to burden, this is what I hear from clients. I don't want to burden anybody, or I don't want to, take up all the space sharing, what's going on for me. How did you work through that to start sharing your story and asking for help?
Yeah. Well, I said at the very beginning here, I'm an open book, so I don't hesitate to answer the tough questions. I really just felt like, the one thing I found the most peace in is talking to other survivors who have been through a similar situation. And so I want to be that resource for people. I want Tim to continue to be that resource for husbands and families. And so I think you're hit with this news, and then you have all of these extremely life-altering decisions you have to make really quick time frame. And Chris can attest, I am a planner through and through. So even when it comes to traveling. And so I didn't have a plan here. And so every decision you make sort of takes one step closer to a new plan. And so even just saying why I made my choices and which choices I did make may help someone else make their own. So I really think that people can listen to me if they want to, or not if they don't want to. And, a few friends have reached out to me and taken me out to lunch or breakfast, bought me coffee, given me all of their extra stuff they didn't need after their surgeries, and just recommending, don't forget to get a lazy boy chair because you're going to be sleeping in it for a month. Those kind of helpful hints I want to make sure that I can do. So if I find out that there is someone that has breast cancer, I reach out immediately and want to just share and hopefully help them make decisions quickly.
That is so impactful. Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick of you? And actually, two-part question. One, isn't that, surrounding yourself with those who've been through it? That's really a feature, not just of breast cancer, but I think of those who go through mental health challenges. I think those in the addiction community, those in, surrounding yourself with a support group of those who know what you're going through is essential. I wanted you to comment on that and the importance of that. And then also, as somebody from the outsider, and Sarah knows I am an open book as well, and I ask all sorts of questions, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. Probably some, too much sometimes, but others may be not uncomfortable, but maybe nervous about, what do I say to somebody who's been diagnosed with cancer? How do I approach them? Do I, I don't want to act like, oh, I'm so sorry, like you're dying, but so maybe advice on those on the outside on how to approach and be supportive, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Again, I'm good at that, but I know a lot of people aren't. So if you can maybe hit on both those points, that'd be great.
Yes. So first of all, I think the community is essential to any kind of healing journey you're on, because we can feel alone. We can feel like there's something wrong with us. We can feel defective. We can feel like we don't belong anywhere. The loneliness can take over, and we can feel like the world is kind of closing in, and a community of people can help you say, you're not alone. I care about you. They can offer support, tips, recommendations, or they can just hold the space to let you talk. And 9 times out of 10, that's what people want. Show up. When I say show up, what does that mean? Show up with, I'm thinking of you, send a card, bring a meal, but really emotionally, I am looking at somebody letting the person just talk. And you don't have to fix it. You can't solve it. You can't make the pain go away. You can't fix the emotional journey that they're going to have to go on. You can just completely hold space and say, that is so hard. I am here if you just want to listen. If you just need to cry and vent, whatever you need, I'm here, and I want to hear. I want to listen. I want to know. Check in on the person. How are you feeling? How did that appointment go? I love the how are you feeling? And that can be vulnerable for people. Some people are like, I'm fine. I'm good. Feelings inside not expressed, because they don't want to go there. And that's okay. Hold the space. Ask the question. How are you feeling? I like the question to tell people is ask the person, what's been the hardest part for you? And how, is there anything you need? And the person probably doesn't know. They just want you to listen. They want you to, and they might say, hey, I need a ride to my chemo treatment, or I need I don't have the energy to cook right now. Asking for help is extremely vulnerable for people. Most people do not like it. They don't want to ask for it. So offer it and mean it, or just show up and do something. Your presence speaks volumes, whether someone's going through a current diagnosis, or perhaps they've lost somebody to breast cancer, or any kind of loss. Show up. I know we don't know what to say, and just say, I am so sorry. This is so painful. This is so hard. And I'm here for you. But show up physically. That's a big piece.
I was going to say, a lot of times I think people don't even know what they need for help, but saying that I'm here if you need anything is great, but also just showing up with, or sending a card, or sending for me, the meal train was just so helpful. I mean, I wish that it could continue for the rest of my life, because it's just one less thing to think about. What are we having for dinner tonight? Which becomes, a very mundane thing. So whenever someone asks me what to get, I usually say like a gift card or a DoorDash, or just bring them a meal. Those are really helpful. And sending cards. I just recently had all of my cards from this past journey put into a book that I can go back to, so that it's not just the stack of cards. It's a book that I can remember those. And I'm getting ready to actually send a card in the mail today too. So just cards mean so much, and we reflect on those. My friend, who hopefully is listening, but she said she just went through all of hers, and I had sent her a card in October, not knowing that I also had breast cancer, and found out in December. So just, you never know, but sending a card means a lot.
Yeah. And I just had this conversation last night. I do think as a society, we want to help others. I know we don't like to ask for it, but people want to help you, and that's also sometimes for those like Sarah that are going through this. And Sarah got to a good spot of realizing like we all needed to help her. In order to help us process what she was going through, and feel like we are there with her, we needed to help her. Like we needed to get her a gift card, or we needed to bring her a meal. People are processing their own. way through that. And that's not easy to see when you're on the other side of that too.
Yeah. And even when people brought meals, some people just wanted to sit with me in my living room, even though I was, hair in a bun and wearing my pajamas still. And it was good to see people. I'm a very much a people person and a connection person. So I did not want to be isolated for that whole time I was home. So
can you talk, Sarah, you went through a pretty major surgery, two really major surgery, but the first one being the really major one. Can you talk, and maybe Kristen, you can kind of chime in on those that are, you don't like being isolated, but you obviously had to be at home for a long time.
Yeah.
You had to be by yourself your husband was there and Gunner and whatnot, but can you talk a little bit about what the emotions were around that and what your feelings were around that? And then Kristen, maybe some advice for those that are going through that. How do you only watch so much Savannah Guthrie in the morning?
Yes, I did watch some really great Netflix shows.
Yeah, but it's like, how do you get yourself mentally through that?
Yeah, and I think, Kristen, we had talked about highlighting some of the hard parts. One hard part for me was I don't sit still ever unless it's like right before I go to sleep or, I need to just veg for a minute. But sitting still for that long of time and then, honestly, Chris, you pointed out that first, my double mastectomy, I couldn't raise my arms past like elbow height for weeks at a time. So, having your husband help you shower, or your sister for that matter, is a very humbling experience. And I definitely was not prepared for as much help as I would need. And I don't like to ask for help myself. I like to be the one that helps. So that was really challenging. I read a lot of books and had a lot of great visitors and phone calls and texts. And there is just, Chris always says, sometimes you just have to sit in it. This is kind of one of those moments where I just had to sit and process that myself. But really needing help was not a very easy thing for me to get over with. But my parents were here for the surgery, and my sister made a great decision to come the week after my surgery when my parents left. So about 2 weeks, and Tim was home most of that time as well. So I wasn't home alone for the very beginning, which is great because I couldn't be. And then had a lot of great friends show up with, care packages and people. My Luger Series sisters sent me a gift. Like they must have worked together and, somebody sent something every day for like, I don't know, 30 days. It felt like I just was getting gifts in the mail all the time. Little things like blankets and hats and gloves and with the breast cancer logo, just things that you wouldn't expect, but they did a really great job, but that was tough.
I think a lot of people also experience, and everybody has different needs and things that are comforting to them. My mom went through breast cancer, and when she had to shave her head, you talked about, the fear of losing your hair. There's grief. There's like identity, there's grief, there's fear, how people are going to react and see you. And I think talking about this, some people don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're going to bury it inside. Mm-hmm. And the body is going to manifest physically. So one of the things I encourage people family members, the person that has the cancer, is to process that, whether that's with a loved one, in a group, with other survivors, and possibly therapy. If it's something, if you're going through a surgery and it was traumatic, you may need some additional support to get through that as you're healing. So there's many different things, but grief, you're not going to come out of it without some grief. There's a before and there's a during and there's an after. And I think if we can name that, we can acknowledge it. And if someone just needs to cry, you say, get it out. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Let it out. Whether it's your children, grandkids, partners, friends, it's okay for them to have their feelings too. And I think we need to normalize that whenever there's a diagnosis, whenever there's a loss, whenever there's a transition going to happen. I think that can be extremely helpful in the healing journey. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would add exactly that same sentiment here, is that I'm not one to talk about my feelings. There's few people I will say, whatever thoughts come to my mind, but the group is very small. And sometimes that, they probably get burdened with hearing the truth from me all the time. And the other piece to that I would say is that if you're very goal oriented, you're like, okay, I have my double mastectomy in March, and here's the list of all of my work product for everybody to handle while I'm gone. And then I'm going to have another small surgery, reconstruction in June. But now I have no idea what's next until November, if I'm going to have another surgery yet this year, if I'm going to wait till next year, if I'm not going to do it at all. So I don't have something next to think about. And then that's where, for me, there's a lot of emotions, because it's like, oh, is this the end? Is it, now what? And so that I had a moment of, I went to go pick up groceries, and I called my husband, and I'm like, I just feel really empty. This is, I just need you to hear me say these words out loud, but I don't know why, and I'm not sad, but I just feel like there's nothing. Because I'm going through these motions, and what's it all for? And so I think you also have this aha moment, like, I have survived, life exists, it moves on, and now what?
Mhm.
And you have like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so I am most recently in therapy as well, and so I'm trying to answer every day these questions of, I want fill in the blank, so that when I meet with her again, we can talk about what it is that I want, and kind of process some emotions, since I don't do that very well.
I love that you're processing the emotions. That's the key in this healing journey. The other piece I wanted to mention was the waiting. I think waiting for results, waiting for the diagnosis, waiting for the next step, like you said, waiting for November, and what are you going to do it now? That also brings a lot of emotions, the waiting. And there's so many waiting moments when there's a diagnosis, or when someone's going through a health issue, and you're going through it personally, and the waiting is so hard.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge that as well.
Oh yeah. Well, you wait, and then you get the next bit of information you need, and then you don't have enough time to wait to make the next decision, right? Like, if I want to do one more surgery yet this year, it's November 4th is the day I get to make that decision, so that there's enough time to squeeze one more in, if that's what it is that we're going to be doing. And some people, wait, and some people have continuing care afterwards, radiation, or anti-hormone drugs, which I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly, but like tamoxifen is something that a lot of women take after their surgeries are over, and that has a lot of side effects and thought process, and some people take chemo pills as well. And so there's just, you hurry up and you wait, and then you got to make a decision, and then you wait some more, and that does become really hard. And that's where the sisterhood comes in. I mean, being able to connect other people who have gone through the same type of surgery, or are on the same medications, or had the same doctors, and that's really beneficial.
For sure.
Well, Sarah Reed, you knocked it out of the park, and this
Is it over already?
Over. But it's actually, I'm sure, hopefully just beginning for some folks, and I hope, I'm certain that your story is bringing some hope to a lot of people out there. So thanks for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Thanks for being willing to raise your hand and be a part of this, Kristen Boyce. Thanks as always for the delicately wonderful questions that you always ask and guide us through, and you do it so gracefully, and I just really appreciate it. So, but Kristen, I'll end as we always do by saying, if someone's in a crisis mode right now, where do they turn?
988, text or call 24/7. There are trained clinicians on the other end. So if you're feeling like you're a burden, you don't know if you can make it one more day, or you just don't know how you're going to survive the next day, please reach out for help. You matter. You are important. You make a difference by being here in this world, and that shame wants to tell you a different story. So please, 988, if you have someone, a loved one, you can call for them, or you can have them on the line with you, but that is a number you want to keep handy, 988. And then I encourage anybody that's facing breast cancer to reach out to the Megan Ott Foundation for support, for a sister friend, for that community that you really need to help you on your healing journey. There's many resources out there. Susan Coleman, I mean, we have so many, but that one locally is the one I would recommend reaching out to.
Absolutely.
And we really appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah. Your link to your podcast is in the chat already. Robert already took care of that for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you back here next month for another edition of Mental Health Monday. In the meantime, stay safe. And thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Boom.